Straight ahead, speaking out, parents who lost their children during the deadly Central Texas floods discuss the state's new efforts to prevent a disaster from happening again. Growing field, why the newly drawn congressional seat in Dallas is attracting attention from more potential candidates. And cracking down, Texas Republicans target Democrats who broke quorum with tough new rules, how lawmakers are reacting. Good Sunday morning to you. I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics starts now. Hello and welcome to Eye on Politics. Hope you're having a great weekend. It's a wrap. The second special legislative session at the Texas Capitol is history. After a lot of drama and debate, a number of bills passed that will impact you and your family. The most important issue to so many Texans proved to be the state's response to the deadly flooding in central Texas in July. More than 130 people lost their lives, including 27 children and counselors at Camp Mystic in Kerrville. At the governor's mansion on Friday, Governor Greg Abbott signed bills to make summer camps safer. He did so in front of some of the parents and siblings of the young victims who were swept away in the catastrophic floods. After signing the bills, the governor gave families the pens he used to sign the bills. The governor said he met with some of the families before the special session began last month.
They pleaded for swift action. They pleaded that their daughters did not die in vain. They wanted laws to be passed so that other parents would not experience the hell that they have been through. They pleaded for camp safety. The legislature understood that mission, understood the urgency. They delivered laws that will be in effect when camps open this next summer.
CBS News correspondent Jason Allen reports on the new rules for camps and spoke with one family who lost their daughter in the tragedy.
At 8 years old, Chloe Childress followed a family tradition of spending summers at Camp Mystic. This year, she turned 18, going from camper to counselor.
She was very excited to return and excited to take care of those little girls, and was even very worried about that. She went, just like everything else, she wanted to do a good job.
Correct.
That was very important to her in the week before she left for camp.
She probably put herself back in the shoes of those
Absolutely.
girls.
Probably.
Absolutely.
Wendy and Matthew Childress learned on July 4th that Chloe was missing after the flood. They began trying to piece together what had happened.
You felt like there are clearly things that are not in place here that could have prevented this.
Something is not right here.
It was mostly that everything was preventable.
They joined the parents of other girls, demanding lawmakers make immediate changes for camps. New rules will prohibit cabins in flood zones, provide warning systems, require training for emergencies, and strengthen communications when there is no power or cell service. Some camps told lawmakers they were concerned about the financial burden of the new laws.
We think that that is an unfortunate stance for them to take, because they should be embracing this, because it is positive for the camps, and longer term, they will thrive if they actually make the appropriate changes.
In an editorial, Childress wrote it was complacency in the old rules that left him and other parents in the tortured position of questioning their own role in their daughters' deaths.
You wrote, "Did I kill my daughter?" What do you mean when you wrote that?
My daughter, I taught her right from wrong. I taught her those things. She obeyed the authorities. She followed directions.
But because the rule was to stay in place, they stayed in place, and it cost all of those children their lives.
So tragic. Thank you, Jason. New outdoor warning sirens and other emergency equipment are on the way for Kerrville and other areas prone to the flash flooding after getting the green light by the legislature. Lawmakers also approved a bill that supporters say will improve education for Texas school children. Governor Abbott will sign a bill that will abolish the STAR test, which has been talked about for years. Instead of one test at the end of the school year, there will now be 3 shorter tests, one at the beginning, another in the middle, and then one at the end. Those who voted for it say those tests will track student progress more effectively. Opponents criticize the new tests, saying they increase the number of exams.
No parent has asked for this. No parent wants this, and I guarantee you by the time parents figure out what we have done, they will be so angry.
We want to know at the beginning of the year and the middle of the year, where are our students in terms of their ranking on our state standards? Which students need help? Which ones are running away with it? And that's the benefit of through-year testing, is that we get this immediate feedback.
The new tests will take effect for the 2027-28 school year. The Texas Education Agency will have to report on the status of the testing program to the legislature in February 2027 during the next legislative session. There are also new restrictions for public bathrooms and locker rooms in Texas. This is in effect for these facilities in government buildings and schools. People must use the bathrooms and locker rooms that match their gender at birth. Lawmakers are also cracking down further on abortions. They passed a bill aimed at stopping the sale, distribution, and trafficking of abortion medication. Included in the legislation is a provision that will allow citizens to file a lawsuit against those who are manufacturing and selling the pills illegally. Texas Republicans also passed new measures to prevent lawmakers, in this case Democrats, from breaking quorum. They passed a bill that will ban fundraising for lawmakers who are breaking quorum, not just for individual legislators, but also for their legislative caucuses as well. Republicans point to former Congressman Beto O'Rourke, whose organization, Powered by People, donated more than $1 million to various legislative caucuses during the quorum break last month. Attorney General Ken Paxton filed suit against O'Rourke, who in turn filed a counter lawsuit against the state. Republicans in the Texas House also increased fines for lawmakers who break quorum and other penalties, including removing Democrats from chairmanships and vice chairmanships and reducing their seniority if they break quorum. Democrats say the Texas Constitution enables quorum breaking and that they were trying to protect their constituents from the new congressional maps. Republicans say the Constitution enables them to enforce quorum. Lawmakers criticized each other on the House floor, blaming each other for delaying approval for the state's flooding response.
The flood bill was held hostage because of a bigger agenda.
It was held hostage for 3 weeks while y'all were in Chicago not doing the work that was called on you to do here.
We spoke with Democratic State Representative Chris Turner of Grand Prairie, who opposed the new crackdown on quorum breakers.
The Republicans are in a really vindictive mood right now. They want to deliver all this retribution on the Democrats, but you know the reality is this is their fault. They rushed this racially gerrymandered congressional map through the legislature, and we fought back. And they don't like it that we fought back, but that's too bad. Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott are trying to remove me from office, along with a dozen of my colleagues in the Democratic caucus. Look, their case in my view, has no merit whatsoever. We have some great lawyers who have filed a response in the Supreme Court, and we'll wait to see what the court decides. But I'm going to stay focused on fighting for my district and representing my district.
Were your constituents upset about you breaking quorum, or no? Did they support you?
My constituents are very supportive of what I did to stand up for our democracy, stand up for their voting rights. And we had a lot of positive feedback from my district, from my constituents, thanking me for taking the step of breaking quorum to fight back against the Trump power grab.
How concerned are you about going forward? There will be increased penalties for quorum breakers.
Well, look, Republicans can do all the stuff that they want to do in that regard. The reality is I'm never going to stop fighting for my constituents, particularly when it comes to their voting rights, nor my Democratic colleagues. If they think that changing our parking space or removing our seniority is going to affect our commitment to fighting for those values, they're sadly mistaken.
Republican State Representative Carissa Richardson of McKinney supported all the new measures.
Well, we want to stop them from doing this again. You know, it costs the taxpayers money every time a special session is called, at least $1 million. And so when they leave, the taxpayers are getting nothing from their money. So we need to stop this.
And so I know there are a number of rules being considered. What do you like? I've seen Democrats or the minority should lose their chairmanships and vice chairmanships, lose their seniority, et cetera. Are you on board with that, and what else would you like to see?
Well, absolutely. Definitely the vice chairmanships were something that this is the first time they've ever done that, required a Democrat vice chair. So, you know, that's a privilege to be a vice chairman. Also, seniority is a privilege. That's not something in our Constitution. It's something given to them for their number of years of service. But if they're not going to serve, then they should have that reduced.
One of the bills that I guess that's up for consideration. If you break quorum, you can't fundraise. And then there was another bill that was passed in the Senate that said no fundraising at all during the special session, just like the regular session. So where are you on those bills?
Well, I prefer that if you break quorum, you can't fundraise, because I believe many Democrats, when they were out, were fundraising. Now, from what I understand, money was given to their caucuses, the Black Caucus, the LGBT caucus, those types of caucuses, to sort of circumvent going directly to the candidates. Now, the rest of us were showing up every day, and we were doing our job. So I hate for us to be penalized and say we can't fundraise at the same time.
And not all of Governor Abbott's agenda items passed during the special session as well. There were a couple of high-profile bills that failed. They include a bill that would have banned all THC products. The Texas Senate, led by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, repeatedly passed the measure. Governor Abbott vetoed the legislation after the regular legislative session, and even after adding the topic to the special session, he, Speaker Dustin Burrows, and the Lieutenant Governor could not reach a deal. Legislation that would have banned THC products for those under 21 and regulated those products also failed. And another big bill that failed was property taxes. Senate Bill 10 would have made it more difficult for cities and counties with more than 75,000 residents to increase property taxes. It would have triggered an election if those cities and counties collected more property tax revenues if they were 2.5% higher than the year before. That's lower than the trigger now, which is an increase of 3.5%. Some House Republicans teamed up with Democrats to kill the bill, saying it would not have lowered property taxes enough and that it didn't include smaller cities and counties. The House changed the Senate bill, but the Senate killed the House amendments.
It's super important to our constituents, but I think it should be equal and paired across the entire state equally, regardless of population. So for that reason, while I fully support property tax relief, my goal is to vote no on this and try to push it back to the Senate to try to get a lot of the things that we did on the House floor added back in.
This bill, while it is not perfect, it is a step in the right direction. You cannot stand up here and say that lowering the voter-approved tax rate from 3.5% to 2.5% is not a step in the right direction of lower taxes.
And so the big question now for Governor Abbott, will he call a third special session? On Friday, he was asked about that related to THC, and he said, quote, "Stay tuned. Something may be happening soon." Up next, why a newly drawn congressional seat in Dallas keeps attracting more potential candidates when Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas returns. Welcome back to Eye on Politics. Now to the continuing fight over the new congressional maps in Texas that will likely turn 5 Democratic seats over to the Republicans in time for next year's midterm elections. There are now 4 big-name Democrats eyeing one of the newly drawn congressional districts. They include former LULAC National President Domingo Garcia, who's also a former Dallas City Council member and state representative, the current congressman for this district, Mark Vesey, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Dallas, and Congresswoman Julie Johnson of Farmers Branch. They're considering running in the new 33rd Congressional District, which will now only be in Dallas County and have a majority of Latinos. Currently, it's in both Dallas County and Tarrant County, which is where Congressman Vesey lives. His home, though, will now be outside of this new district. Congressman Vesey says he's still considering whether to run in the new district or somewhere else in next year's midterm elections. Domingo Garcia told us if the new maps are not reversed by the courts and are upheld, he'll strongly consider jumping into the primary for this seat.
If the map stays as is, then the 33rd becomes very much like my wife's county commissioner's district, which would be a majority Hispanic district in Dallas County. And we've never had a Hispanic represent Dallas County in Congress, or North Texas for that matter, in the entire history of Texas.
And so you're looking at it?
We're looking at it. We're going to see what is the final map and then make a final decision.
And why is this something that you're considering if that, if the map stays as is? Absolutely. Why is it something that you're considering?
Because I think it's very important that we send a fighter to Congress to take on the Trump administration and the unconstitutional, illegal things they're doing. And I think some of the national leadership of the Democratic Party has frankly just been too soft, too conciliatory, and you got to stand up for American rights and for our values and what the Statue of Liberty stands for, as opposed to those that are trying to tear those values down.
Now, Julie Johnson, Congresswoman from 32, said she would consider 33 if Congressman VC doesn't run for this district. So you'd have to, there would be a primary there, obviously.
If the map stay as is, 33rd basically becomes an open congressional seat. Julie Johnson doesn't live in the district. Mark Vesey doesn't live in the district. I live in the district. I've represented as a council member, mayor pro tem, and a state representative. I know what Oak Cliff and West Dallas need.
So it sounds like you've made up your mind you would do it if the map stays the same.
Again, it just really is, it's in a state of flux.
Yeah.
But I'm setting up an exploratory committee to look at running if the maps stay as they are.
Yeah. What are you expecting to happen? Because I know, the arguments have been that this is a violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Are you expecting the judge, do you think you've got a strong case to make?
Well, in 2011, we actually won. LULAC won against the state of Texas, and the primaries were set from March to May, and then, the runoff was in August, and I was in that runoff. So I know that the courts can change the dynamics of what the Texas legislature and Governor Abbott have done, and I expect that there's about a 50-50 chance that may change now.
And my last question is, I know you're in the battle for still over the 2021 maps.
That's correct.
Why has that taken so long? We're on year 4 already, right?
Because normally challenges in federal court with 3-judge panel, including the entire state of Texas, the second largest in the country, it's a time-consuming battle. And unfortunately, now we got not only the state of Texas with Governor Abbott and Paxton against us, but now we got the Department of Justice under Trump fighting us also. So it's an uphill battle, but it's one that we think that we can win.
Democratic Congresswoman Julie Johnson of Farmers Branch says she's also eyeing the 33rd Congressional District because her current seat is one of those likely turning Republican. That district will extend to East Texas under the new map. We spoke with Congresswoman Julie Johnson about why she's looking at the 33rd Congressional District.
I've spoken with Mark. He's trying to figure out what he's going to do. If he chooses not to run for 33 because his main base of support is in Fort Worth and that's no longer part of this, then I'm definitely going to run for 33. But if he chooses to run for 33, I've already made a personal decision that I'm not going to primary Mark Vesey. And so I think Democrats need to be able to get it together and put our resources on a general election. And if that happens, I might look at 24. I don't know what I'm going to do, but right now I have a strong look at 33, and that's probably where I'm going to end up.
So if you're going to run against in the 24th Congressional District, that's a Republican seat held by Beth Van Dyne. That's going to be a tough race.
Oh yeah, it'll be a hard race. It's not something I'm unfamiliar with. When I first ran for the state legislature, I ran against a Republican incumbent and flipped that seat and beat him by 13.5 points. But, my preference is 33. That's, if you look at what is your district, and if you look at it's the people you represent or is your number. And in the new 33, I have the largest amount of people that I currently represent in that new district of any of the three of us. So, Mark and I are good friends, and we're going to sort it out. And, we'll make our announcements whenever those decisions are final, and probably based on the finality of the maps.
Yeah, if the maps stay the same.
If they're tossed out, I'm running for 32. I'm the incumbent, and we're going to stay where we are. I love my district. I love the folks I represent. I've made some great relationships here. And so that would be my preference, is for the maps to get voided, because I do believe strongly that they are in gross violation of the Voting Rights Act, and that the legal challenges have really strong footing to do that.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is also considering a run in the 33rd Congressional District, and that's because her home is now in this district and not in the district she represents now, the neighboring 30th Congressional District, which includes a larger part of Tarrant County and will include a majority of African Americans. The U.S. Constitution says members of Congress must be residents in the state they represent, not in the specific districts that they serve. Certainly a lot of moving parts that won't be settled until after the courts decide whether to uphold the new congressional maps. Up next, why businesses that have paid tariffs could get a refund when Eye on Politics comes right back. A federal appeals court has struck down President Trump's tariffs, saying he went too far in declaring a national emergency to justify the new taxes on imported goods. In this week's brief, Sarah Jenkins explains businesses that paid those tariffs may soon get a refund.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection has collected more than $200 billion in tariffs from American businesses of all sizes since the tariffs began earlier this year, according to agency data. More than $70 billion comes from payments of country-based tariffs that a federal appeals court recently ruled President Trump lacked the authority to impose. The president appealed, which means, for now, there's no guarantee that American businesses will receive refunds. But if the court's decision stands, the U.S. government could have to return billions in tariff revenue it has collected from those businesses. If the tariffs are struck down, businesses could face hurdles collecting refunds for what they already paid the U.S. government, and there's no guarantee that a refund system would be automatic or that the process would be simple. For The Brief, I'm Sarah Jenkins.
All right, thank you, Sarah. And a friendly reminder, you can watch the full interviews from today's show. Just go to the CBS Texas YouTube page, and while you're there, click the subscribe button. And that's all for Eye on Politics this week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening to you at CBS News Texas. I'll see you next week, and from all of us here, have a great Sunday.